At one time in the history of our planet, giant redwoods like these grew all over the world. Fossil remains from these magnificent wonders have been discovered on St. Lawrence Island in the rugged Bering Sea, near modern deserts in Arizona, throughout Japan and Europe and Asia. But today, hundreds of centuries later, Sequoia sempervirens, the coast redwood, exists only in a narrow strip along the north coast of California. 90% of the old growth has been harvested. Half of what remains is on private lands, the rest on state and federal lands. There are precious few of these giants left anywhere on Earth. Travelers driving Highway 101 along California's lonely north coast, however, have a rare, nearly extinct opportunity to see the last living link with an Earth that was commonplace millions of years ago. Welcome to the Trees of Mystery, a family operation of a natural attraction that can show you what forests were like even before man set foot on Earth. This forest you are now seeing contains more living material per square foot than anywhere on the entire planet. As one of the scarce few remaining redwood groves worldwide, it might not even exist today if it were not for the vision, foresight, and imagination of a man named Carl Bruno and a family named Thompson. Back in 1931, this remote region was no one's idea of a tourist destination. Travelers to the area had to get along as best they could on sometimes muddy and rutted dirt roads. Fog obscured distances, and overnight accommodations were non-existent. A man named Carl Bruno came upon this redwood grove and saw possibilities others did not. As he explored the forest, he was fascinated by the many unusual trees and tree formations. Convinced others would be equally fascinated, Bruno purchased land from the DeMartin Ranch and set about to build the first log cabins, then a gift shop. Occasionally, some visitors would even stop by. He called his attraction Wonderland Park. In 1938, a locally famous woodcarver, Ambrose Grunke, visited Wonderland Park. He too was fascinated by the wonders to be found there. He was also inspired by a statue he had seen at the 1915 exposition done by sculptor John Fraser and called simply End of the Trail. Using only an axe, a handsaw, and a knife, Grunke carved the magnificent statue that today greets each and every visitor to the Trees of Mystery. In fact, you can see his signature set in nails on the bottom of the horse's neck. During the dark days of World War II, business was so slow that John Bruno would nap on the counter waiting for a customer. It was also during this time that the name was changed from Wonderland Park to the Trees of Mystery. The Thompson family purchased the tree's attraction in 1946, when there was little more than the original log cabin gift shop and a muddy trail through the woods. Ever since then, the family has built and added to the experience. Today, the Trees of Mystery and the End of the Trail Museum is a major attraction on California's north coast, featuring a fine AAA motel, a full-service restaurant, and all of the wondrous experiences in the redwood grove itself. One of the first projects the Thompson family undertook was expansion of the gift shop. Later, a brand new gift shop was added and stocked with many quality items that tied in with the redwood theme. Next, Paul Bunyan became a regular here. The Thompson family wanted something special to dramatically greet visitors and to instantly provide a glimpse of the scale of the trees themselves. Who better than the legendary Paul Bunyan and his companion Babe, the blue ox? Paul and Babe certainly do convey the scale of the timber in this part of the world. At 49 feet 2 inches tall, Paul weighs 30,000 pounds, while 35-foot-tall Babe maintains his shape at 35,000 pounds. Paul is constantly on the lookout for new friends, and as our official host, greets and entertains visitors from all over the world.
Well, hello there, children. How you doing today? Hey, you like that there boot? Well, that's a size 1200 triple Z. Yeah, probably one of the largest boots you'd ever want to come across, especially to climb on. In fact, I bet that boot's bigger than your grandpa's.
After visitors pass Paul and Babe, they come to the entrance to the trees. This hollow log by Paul's right boot is where the mystery begins. The log itself was hollowed out by a forest fire over 100 years ago. It's 40 feet long and high enough inside so people well over 6 feet tall can walk through upright. The first unusual formation to greet visitors is the family tree. The main tree is over 14 feet in diameter and supports an estimated weight of 350 tons. 11 other trees grow from the limbs of this massive Sitka spruce, forming 12 trees in one, some growing almost as tall as the main tree itself. Next, visitors are usually impressed by the elephant tree. It not only resembles an elephant kneeling down, but also has a very unusual root system sprouting from the side, twisting about, then entering the ground. The upside-down tree is very strange. It is really two trees, one vertical, seemingly normal tree, and out of its side, a horizontal tree, desperately seeking sunlight. The upside-down tree also has two root structures, one in the ground and one in the air against the fallen giant log. The fallen giant is a huge redwood tree 320 feet long that has been lying on the ground for hundreds of years. So long, in fact, that trees 10 feet in diameter have grown over it, yet it is still basically sound. As visitors continue on up the trail, they pass many examples of unusual trees, such as the large 3-in-1 tree. It starts out as one large tree, then splits to form 3 large trees and rises to over 200 feet. There are many tree oddities like this here at the Trees of Mystery, even though this is fairly rare in most forests. So many of our trees are of a different form that we actually have few so-called normal trees in this stand. It is the very reason Carl Bruno was originally captivated by this special place. That large burl growing high on the side of this tree is so rare, only one in about 25,000 trees grow to this large size. This large burl is unique in its size and quite valuable. It is sought by wood artists for its beautiful grain, no two of which are alike. Often one can capture a special time in the forest, when the sun shines in amongst these giant trees at a low angle, creating a wondrous effect, almost a glow, with the foggy mists. This is certainly a place of beauty and peace, to be here among these giants, the largest living things on earth, some of which started growing before the time of Christ. The single most popular formation is the cathedral tree. These 9 trees have grown together in an almost perfect half circle, forming a beautiful arrangement 800 years old. Many weddings are held here each year, in addition to community Easter services every year, weather permitting. Along the way from the cathedral tree to the Brotherhood tree, visitors can see many other examples of unusual formations. The area around the Brotherhood tree was logged in the 1950s, but the large tree, for some reason, was spared. This massive example of the Sequoia sempervirens now stands out virtually alone, 18 feet in diameter and 224 feet tall. It is one of the most impressive examples of the largest living thing on Earth that you can see. The area we have just looked at, with the family tree, the elephant tree, and the other highly unusual formations, is virgin forest, a stand that has evolved over centuries. From the Brotherhood tree, there is a new loop trail back that takes you through some of the logged area of this grove, a place where man has had considerable impact on the forest. And it's really a monument to the tenacity which redwoods have for survival. For it is here, where man has tried to destroy, that the trees show their finest examples of the urge to live, to carry on despite threats to their very being. There are at least 3 methods redwoods have for survival. The first are the burls, such as the giant one we have already seen. The second survival method is through the root structure. The third is through limbs. All three methods are ways in which a damaged or logged tree can continue to live on. The cathedral tree is a mature example of an original very large tree falling down from natural causes and the roots and burls sprouting into further life. A tree that falls down will have limbs that point upward. These limbs can turn into new trees, nourished until maturity by the fallen tree. Most people are surprised to discover that redwood trees have very shallow and small root structures without a deep taproot. They manage to stay upright by several methods. First, the wood at the bottom of the tree is much wetter than the top wood, creating a natural counterbalance. Second, there is a three-way crack at the center of any large redwood that allows the tree to sway in the wind without breaking. Third, there is sometimes a rift crack, which forms a buttress resisting forces pushing to one side. And finally, limbs are sometimes sent out to one side only, just to balance these enormous trees. The bark on these magnificent trees contains no resin, therefore is resistant to most forest fires. Redwood trees can only burn if they are severely damaged or diseased, or caught in an unusual, extremely hot fire. Sometimes fire will get inside a redwood through damage to the bark near the roots. When this happens, the fire will burn inside until it runs out of oxygen. This can create a living hollow tree called a goose pen tree, because early settlers once kept geese inside these formations. Burls such as this one are like fertile egg sacs waiting to burst forth with new life. If the tree is ever harmed or stressed, the burl is activated by a stress chemical and bursts into new trees, or a continuation of the old tree. Many of the stumps of the trees that were once logged in the 50s have sprouted numerous saplings using all three methods. Here is a miniature replica of the cathedral tree. You can take reservations now for when this formation is ready, about 600 years from now. Another dramatic formation spanning the trail is this candelabra tree. Visitors walk under a tree which has fallen down, and its limbs have turned into trees. The only tree of this group that has roots is the horizontal one. The vertical trees feed the horizontal tree through the photosynthesis process. Through the redwood forest, visitors can see many varieties of mushrooms and toadstools. Most are fairly benign, some are quite edible, and a few are extremely poisonous. But they all may be admired for their beauty and delicacy. When conditions are right, the shaggy manes burst forth in the thickets, growing from the hard-packed ground, and the chanterelles form a miniature forest. Shelf fungus is a permanent fixture on the side of spruce trees and is sometimes used as an art medium. Returning back to the main trail, visitors come next to the Trail of Tall Tales. Paul Bunyan has long been the host at the entrance to the trees, so it was natural to really tell his story and at the same time say something more about redwoods. The stories of Paul and his adventurous friends have been carved into the largest pieces of milled redwood in the world. The artist was Ken Kaiser, and he used only a chainsaw, chisel, and axe. Nowhere else in the world will you see single giant redwood boards this large, because the process of milling was invented here in Klamath. The biggest single board here is 6 feet wide, 20 feet long, and 10 inches thick. Only with a tree the size of a redwood is it possible to make such large boards. It is here in the Trail of Tall Tales where we celebrate both the redwood and that special part of Americana, Paul Bunyan. According to legend, Paul was just like all other babes, his mother said, but soon he started growing something fierce. Soon they had to find another place for him to sleep, so they lashed 2 boats together in the bay, and the waves would rock baby Paul to sleep. There are more than 80 original carvings here depicting some of the many stories about Paul and his friend Babe, the blue ox. Many of these stories were made up by loggers sitting around the bunkhouse stove. Don't forget that the reason Paul is here in Klamath at the Trees of Mystery is because this is the only place that he could find trees big enough to lean against to scratch his back. Red Thumb Robbie was one of Paul's men. His job was replanting after logging. His thumb was red instead of green from planting so many redwood trees. If we just cut them and didn't replant them, there wouldn't be any trees for the next generation. Many visitors enjoy the pooped logger, sitting, having a cup of coffee. Mama Bear and Flapjack are very impressive. Paul's girlfriend is a favorite of everyone. She is beautiful and the only carving of the group that was done with anything other than a chainsaw. An axe was used to smooth her beautiful complexion. This cross-sectional cut of a medium-sized redwood marks events in the time of its life and the end of the trail for this tour. However, visitors usually stop here for a few moments to reflect on the radius of this tree relative to dates and historical events. This particular tree was a small seedling at the time of the Crusades, 1,000 years ago. This tree reached a diameter of 15 feet, while the largest coast redwoods are about 24 feet and over 2,000 years old. By this time, most visitors are ready for a snack, and what better way to end a casual scenic stroll outdoors than with a chunky piece of homemade fudge here at our gift shop. The Trees of Mystery gift shop is very special and unique. It is the largest gift shop on the West Coast, and that means it has something for everybody. Especially highlighted are the redwood gift items, crafted locally and of lasting beauty. In addition to redwood, there are items made from myrtle wood and cedar, along with trinkets and toys and jewelry galore. The list is long, so if you are looking for a gift or a memento of your trip, it is undoubtedly here. At the north end of the gift shop, visitors are in for a special treat. The End of the Trail Indian Museum is the finest private collection of Native American artifacts on display anywhere with no charge to the public. It is a very broad collection that represents Indian nations from all over the western half of the United States. It is very deep in the number and quality of artifacts and crafts displayed. This is the private collection of the current matriarch of the Trees of Mystery, Mary Lee Smith, formerly Mary Lee Thompson. It represents a love affair with the ancient and modern cultures of our first Americans that goes back more than 40 years.
With the advantages of modern civilization, it is no longer necessary to hunt for food and clothing or to spend long hours gathering materials and weaving utility baskets. Sad but true, much of what you see here is already a lost art. Every year, these treasures become lost to our future generations by fire, flood, neglect, and time itself. With this museum, a part of their cultures will be preserved for your children and mine. This is my promise.
Visitors entering the main gallery pass through an entrance framed with huge timbers from a giant redwood tree. The walls of this large gallery and the rooms displaying the artifacts of the local tribes are also of the beautiful and colorful Northern California redwood. Mounted and displayed here are many of the animals used by the Native Americans for food, clothing, and shelter. Surrounding this room is a collection of cradle boards representing many tribes. It is interesting to note, though they all served the same purpose of carrying a baby, each mother in her area used her own style and materials at hand. Off the central gallery are 5 rooms separating the different cultures exhibited here. The museum is divided into geographic areas rather than by tribes. The northwest room is lined with northern cedar, a wood used in their carvings as well as in their bentwood storage boxes, longhouses, and whaling boats. These people lived in a narrow coastal area from southeastern Alaska to the redwoods of Northern California and are instantly recognized by their distinctive totems found nowhere else in the world. The land and sea provided ready food, which left time for the development of their fine arts. These people were carvers of wood, stone, bone, and ivory, and weavers of wool, bark, and intricate basketry. The southwest room in the museum shows the diverse arts and crafts of the people who eke out a living in the stark and beautiful desert. Weavers of cotton, wool, and basketry, forgers of silver, artists of wood, paint, clay, and turquoise. All these are from the talents of the peoples of the Southwest. Here the climate played the most important part in how and where these hardy people existed. They settled near the life-giving rivers, and when the summer sun became unbearable, they moved to the mountains. There are many different Navajo rugs displayed here, colored with the natural dye of berries, plants, and roots for the wool. Pueblo pottery dating back some 1,400 years shows the talents of some of the southwestern Americans. Contemporary pieces of jewelry, many featuring silver and turquoise, are also on display in this room and are available for purchase. The Plains and Plateau Room, with many colorful examples of beadwork and feathers, is lined with pine wood. These were people who were masters at tanning hides and who worked their trade beads into works of art. Nomads of the Rocky Mountains, Texas and Oklahoma, and north into Canada, these people were constantly on the move, searching for food. The deer, bison, elk, antelope, caribou, and bear were not only their staples and diet, but served as a source for clothing, shelter, weapons, and tools. Large tanned animal skins were used for teepees, clothing, saddles, moccasins, rifle scabbards, pipe bags, and much more. Smaller animal hides were made into tobacco pouches and medicine bags. Often the head and paws were included in the decoration. The California and Great Basin Room shows the many different types and styles of basketry, some from tribes non-existent today. Located between the Rockies and the Sierra Nevada mountains, and including the eastern arid border of California, is what is known as the Great Basin area. Because much of the land was barren, most of the waking hours of the inhabitants were spent searching for food, shelter, and clothing. Edible roots were a mainstay of their diet, as were insects such as grasshoppers, ants, bees, caterpillars, and crickets. Larger game was scarce, but the annual rabbit hunt provided meat and social occasions at the gathering of the tribes. Basketry was used for all purposes, from hats to storage baskets, bowls, gathering trays, and cooking pots. Here in Northern California, the Pomo people developed basketry to its finest art. Various techniques of coiling and twining were used. Clamshell and abalone beads were prized and traded. Most treasured are the famous feather baskets used as a gift or sacrificed on a funeral pyre. The local Native Americans are the Hoopa and Eureka, who live along the mighty Klamath River. These dresses were worn for wedding and ceremonial events. Another important ceremony is the dance of the white deer. The Hoopa, who lived upriver, used the acorn as a main staple. Acorns were ground, sifted, and cooked in a woven basket, using heated rocks stirred quickly so they wouldn't burn through the basket. One corner of the California and Great Basin Room deserves special attention. Framed in redwood and under glass is our treasured collection of original Edward Curtis photographs, known as gold tones. These are a true visual record for future generations. Edward Sheriff Curtis spent 30 years of his life taking 40,000 pictures of our Native Americans before they became too exposed to the cultures of the advancing white man. Traveling by mule, wagon, and horse, carrying the heavy photographic equipment of his day, Curtis was in turn courageous and courteous in winning the confidence and cooperation of his Indian subjects. In 1906, President Theodore Roosevelt, believing in the historic importance of his work, introduced Curtis to J.P. Morgan, the financier who gave $75,000 to further his project of putting a vanishing race of people on film. The proud expressions of these magnificent first Americans have been saved and serve as a fitting ending to a tour through the Trees of Mystery End of the Trail Museum. Even as visitors leave the Trees of Mystery and the end of the Trail Museum, there are usually a few more things to see on their way to the parking lot. Throughout the year, a dazzlingly colorful floral display can be seen on the grounds here. Many are representative of the over 500 varieties of wildflowers native to this area. And of course, when visitors are finished with their tour of the Trees of Mystery, there are many other attractions to see and experience within a few short miles of here. We have our version of a drive-through tree, located near the main Highway 101 exit to the town of Klamath. And our monuments to the California bear can be seen on the bridge abutments right off Highway 101 as it crosses the Klamath River. And of course, the foremost attraction in this area is the mighty Klamath River itself. Salmon and steelhead fishermen have known about this legendary fishery for years. And when the fish enter the river to spawn, the fishermen are never very far behind. This beautiful river winds its way inland for more than 200 miles, providing a magnificent habitat for all manner of wildlife and a natural, unspoiled recreation area for many looking for a true wilderness experience. Klamath is located in the geographical center of a vast recreational wonderland formed by the Redwood National and State Parks and Six Rivers National Forest. It has nearly 3,000 RV and campsites available in private campgrounds with ocean, river, and forest environments. Many fine restaurants, motels, and lodging facilities, and a hostel welcome visitors year-round from the redwoods to the sea. To many who don't take the time to look, this area in the far northern part of California may look forever hidden under a thick blanket of coastal fog. To those who take the time to visit Klamath and discover the adventures readily available, delightful and wondrous memories are theirs. In the words of Joseph Strauss, builder of the Golden Gate Bridge, in his poem, The Redwoods, "Here sown by the Creator's hand, in serried ranks the redwoods stand. No other clime is honored so, no other lands their glory know." The Trees of Mystery in Klamath, California, a truly American experience.